huge moment for NHL Seattle. I'm Bob Condor. We're here today with the first general manager of the Seattle franchise, Ron Francis. Ron, welcome, and first reaction to finding out you got this job.
Well, thank you, Bob. It was obviously extremely exciting. I think when you go through the process, the more I spent time out here in the city and got to know what it was all about, the more time I got to spend with the people that were involved in this process and meet the ownership group. It quickly went from a why to a why not, and to have the opportunity to be the first general manager of this franchise is extremely humbling, and I'm excited about the opportunities.
Your wife Mary Lou's reaction, your kids' reaction to you taking this job, getting this job?
Yeah, I mean, they were all excited. My wife has always been of the school of thought wherever I am, the family is. So whether it was, well, as a player we got traded or post-playing, she was always willing to pick up the family and move and have us all together, which has been tremendous. She's been putting up with me. I think we had a 31st wedding anniversary last week, so I think she still likes me, so we're good there. And the kids were extremely excited. In fact, they're saying, "Hey, that's a great area, right? You love it, Dad, and happy for you." And my daughter lives just down the road in LA, so she's not far away, and the other two are in Raleigh. One in school, and we'll see what happens when he graduates.
So, as somebody who is well prepared, whether you were a player or in the front office or a GM, you probably had some of your own rationale or things that you were looking for in another opportunity like this one. What were some of the categories that you were thinking had to be checked off for you to be looking forward to working for that organization?
Well, I think there's obviously the major things that everybody looks at. You want a strong ownership group. You want to be in a solid market. Mm-hmm. Important for me was the people that I was going to work with, and certainly having the opportunity to work with Todd Leiweke. Mm-hmm. I can't find anybody to say a bad thing about him. He's got an outstanding reputation. He's not only been successful at what he does, but he does it with solid core values, and that's important to me. Right. So I'm excited to have this opportunity.
Yeah, amen, brother, on Todd Leiweke. I mean, absolutely. I think the whole organization is inspired, really, by the way he operates. You mentioned that idea of why not. The other thing about why is probably you're going to get to bring some of your own people, right? I mean, you mentioned working with people you appreciate, and clearly everyone here is flattered that you feel that way about Todd and the group. But you probably have some ideas, not looking for you to say who they are, of course, but ideas that you can build out. It must be exciting to think you can build out.
No, it is. I mean, I think when you look at it, it's a bit of a daunting task, because you're defining all the different departments, the different roles, the people you're going to hire, you're responsible for, the timing of when you're going to hire them, salary, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes into this project, but on the flip side, it's a blank canvas, and you get to help create that culture and that atmosphere and the product that you want, not only to be successful on the ice, to represent this franchise well in the community as well.
Right. So type of leader, you want those people to be giving you suggestions, ideas, having a point of view. You're not looking for the yes person.
No, I don't want any yes people. I want people that are willing to walk into my office and give me their opinion. Mm-hmm. I want people with integrity and character, hardworking. Those are the kind of people I like to surround myself with. And at no point should they never feel that they couldn't walk into my office and express an opinion or an idea.
So you're someone who had other opportunities. Did you have a moment when you knew that Seattle was the right place and the right franchise?
Yeah, I had some other opportunities. Some teams have reached out to me in the last year, and then obviously on July 1st, when I became sort of a free agent per se, I had some other conversations with other teams. But this was one that was very intriguing to me. As I said earlier, you get to come in and kind of, with a blank canvas, build that organization from the ground up. That's not something you get to do very often in this game. And to work with the people, as I mentioned earlier, it seems like taught us, put together a great staff. As I said as well, too, I've interviewed with 7 or 8 of the different owners. Felt extremely comfortable in each and every one of those interviews as to what they were trying to do. They want to do things right, and they want to run a first-class organization, and that's something I'd love to be a part of and help build.
Yep. I want to ask you in a minute about players and the type of players and the type of style of the team, but it is July, and everybody talks about free agency, and more of us know about salary cap than we ever thought we would, and so on. You must also be excited that you can pick and choose the contracts. You don't inherit any. You basically can really form between draft and acquisition by trade, and obviously signing some people if it comes up. You have a philosophy, I think, that starts with the draft.
Yeah, no, I think with any organization, you have to scout and draft extremely well, and then the next stage is making sure that you provide these guys the developmental process that helps them get to the NHL and be successful.
Yeah.
There's always going to be tough decisions in regards to who you sign, how much term you give them, how much money you give them, managing the cap in that regard. But on one hand, as you said, there's no mistakes that you're coming in to have to fix. But on the other hand, any mistakes moving forward, you know who the finger is going to be pointing at. So it's a unique opportunity, but one, as I said many times, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to do this.
So 2 things about drafting players. One is, what do you look for? What are you asking your scouts to look for? And then maybe talk a little bit about the process of being patient with some of these players. I mean, there's 18-year-olds. You played with one, Jaromir Jagr, who definitely are ready for the NHL, but there's other 18-year-olds who might go back to juniors or play a couple years in NCAA. So maybe what do you look for, and then how do you then determine how many years that player might need for the seasoning?
Well, I think the key is looking at everybody individually. As you said, some people are maybe a little bit mature beyond their years off the ice. Maybe their game is mature on the ice. Other guys may be a little bit more of a late developer and need some more time to blossom and help develop. So, I think you go through a process. You're watching them play. You're looking for certain things in their game that you like. I tend to like guys with good hockey sense. And in today's game, you have to be able to skate because it's a fast-paced game, but you also need a little bit of beef when you get into the playoffs, as you saw again this year.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things you're trying to put together as you build a team. But with these guys, you have to remember that they are 18 years old. So it's not a perfect science, and you're trying to project out. You try and get to the bottom of who they are during the interview process at the combine and ahead of the draft. Certainly character is a big part for me that I think is important. I think if you have that character, when you get into those tough times, those guys can tend to pull together and get you through. So a lot of moving parts when you go through the process, but drafting and developing is a huge part of the success of any organization.
So character. We're both parents. We met all sorts of kids in this age range. Can you get a feeling almost the way an athlete walks in a room or shakes your hand or interacts with the staff? I mean, how do you sort of build that idea?
And I think it's a process. Certainly you do some homework on them ahead of the draft. You're talking to their coaches, you're talking to trainers, you're talking to billets, whoever you can get your hands on to get information about that individual and make sure that there's no red flags. You're sitting down face to face with that person, you're having discussion and dialogue and asking questions. I think it's certainly easy for people to exhibit character when things are going well. I think you really find out about a lot of people in tough situations. So you try and drill down a little bit and find out more about them as a person. And when you leave that interview process, you get a pretty good sense of kind of where they're at.
You mentioned skating, and those of us that have played at way lower level than you, understand that there's footwork and all sorts of power skating that kids and any of us to play, need to get better at. But there's got to be something you're looking for when you say it's good skaters, because they've got to be, if they're playing for a junior team or an NCAA team, they're decent skaters. But there must be something you're looking for that maybe the rest of us don't quite see when we watch a game.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of decent skaters. I was probably a decent skater in my day. I'm not sure I could play in today's NHL because they always said I wasn't that fast. But I think there's different parts of it. There's guys that are just flat out fast, and that's an important attribute to have. Right. There's guys that maybe not be as fast, but they have great hockey sense, and because of the hockey sense, that offsets maybe their quickness or their speed, but they can still play the game and be effective. Right. So But I think in today's game, the pace of it is so much faster than it was in my area, and it continues to seem to get faster every day. But so that's certainly a part that I think you need to have in your lineup.
You mentioned beef earlier, and obviously referencing the Blues and the Bruins, both pretty similar teams, really mirror each other's makeup. And do you sort of think about the regular season and the playoffs as you build a team being a little bit different? Because the way teams play in the playoffs, that physical style, that's hard to do over an entire, calendar year or calendar hockey year. Do you sort of build in, like, these are guys I'm going to really need in the playoffs, or they would shine in that tougher, more physical environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to get there first, which is a tough challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good teams, and it's an over an 82-game schedule, so it's not a sprint. It's a long grind to get there. But as you see, when the playoffs kind of start, everything gets sort of amped up a little bit, and the physicality becomes a little bit more important. So, in a perfect world, you've got a team that gets into the playoffs and doesn't necessarily have to win the league or stuff, but gets in and then is built for that long run in the playoffs.
Right. So everybody that you will run into in town is certainly going to ask you about the name. We're not going to talk about that here. But I got a feeling a lot of the hockey fans, the people who know the sport pretty well, are going to want to know, how do you think we're going to do in the expansion draft? How everybody else is going to be smarter now, because what happened with Vegas, they don't want it to happen again, so to speak. How do you look at the expansion draft? You've been on the side of trying to protect your players. Now you're the guy who gets to make those picks.
Yeah, quite honestly, I used to joke you want to be the second GM in Seattle, not the first, based on what Vegas did. But
yeah.
I think, everybody's saying that the GMs will handle it different, but they're still, at the end of the day, if a GM has a lineup and he's got a good young player that he knows can play in the NHL, and in order to protect him, he has to give up a pick or a prospect. I think the pick and the prospect, there's no guarantee they're going to play. So I think you look at that. I still think there's going to be teams that are up against the cap and maybe some bad contracts that they need to move, and hopefully you can work out a deal in that regard. And I think one thing that'll be unique in Seattle versus maybe what Vegas did is the ability to go out and sign free agents. And when you're playing in a city like Seattle, where people love the city and want to be a part of it, when you're playing in a state where it doesn't have state income tax, we're only one of 6 teams in the league that does that, so it offers another benefit for the players. I think it'll be a very attractive spot for free agents to look at.
Makes total sense. So we were talking a little bit earlier about you were looking for great skaters or speed. You're looking for that hockey IQ. Can you talk a little bit about how you see hockey IQ? Is it playing together well? Is it knowing where the puck's going to go? I mean, how do you surmise it?
To me, hockey IQ is kind of understanding where the game's going to go before it starts to happen. I think Wayne Gretzky in his day said, "Don't go to where the puck is, going to where it's going to go." And to me, that's where you're watching players. Are they able to pick up decisions and see where things are going to happen before they happen? Are they able to make the right read on a defensive play and cover the right guy, or offensively get to the right hole and anticipate that that's where the puck's going to be? So, not an easy thing, but certainly a thing that I think is extremely important.
And is that born with? Learn it? How does one develop that hockey sense?
I found it's probably one of the tougher things to improve in a player, but I think if you work with them and over and over again, you can improve that. And at the end of the day, if you improve it that much, a lot of games now in the hockey league, in the National Hockey League, are decided by that much. So it's certainly worth continuing to work.
So Ron, how has the staff changed when you played, and even early in time as a front office executive? Because I get the feeling there's more training, high performance training, pay attention to injuries a little bit differently, do the things we're talking about here, like, there's a combine. I'm not sure you ever attended a combine when you played. So how do you see that as being part of the game now? Because it certainly affects other sports.
Well, I think it's certainly involved not only in hockey, but all professional sports and sports in general. So, in my area, much older than the kids today, so we didn't have a lot of that stuff. Even going into games, there really wasn't much of a pre-scout on what we're going to face that night. Now there's really no more secrets in the game. I mean, you have video, you know what the other team's going to do ahead of time. You know, what their power play looks like, their PK, their forecheck, all those kind of things, and then your coaches are working on that. You know, teams now have an addition of a strength and conditioning guy on board.
Yep.
A lot of teams have nutritionists and people cooking food to make sure their players are in top-notch shape.
Yep.
You know, because it is a long season and you want to be ready to go. You know, there's been the involvements of analytics in the game, which I strongly believe in as
Right.
well. So there's a lot of different things that are kind of happening at the same time to try and put the best product on the ice, and it's a matter of hiring the right people with the
Yeah.
best knowledge and leaning on them to do the job properly.
Well,
And
you did inherit one hockey person. You've got Alex Mandricki on staff to help you sort of build out that analytics. When you got into it, and I know you at Carolina, you hired a part-timer and sort of got the club going on that idea. Where do you see that fitting in how you will evaluate players, whether it's expansion draft, entry draft?
well, that's a good question, Bob, about analytics. For me, it's kind of a balance and check. You know, I think there's things you see with your eyes that maybe you think are accurate, and then maybe the numbers don't back it up, or maybe you look at something on the numbers and you say there's no way that's the case, and then you check with your eye and it either confirms or denies that. So, you know, I don't trust my eyes 100%. I don't trust the analytics 100%, but I use them both together to try and form the opinion that I think is best.
So, switching gears a little bit, Seattle fans. What does the team need? What does the club needs from those Seattle fans? What kind of energy do you get from crowds when you were in Hartford or Carolina or Pittsburgh?
Well, first of all, I think it's absolutely incredible that the league asked the ownership here to come up with 10,000 season ticket deposits, and they accomplished that in 12 minutes. When that happened, I mean, the rest of the hockey world took notice of what was happening here, and then it continued for 25,000 in the first hour, 32,000, I think, on the list, and another 25,000 sitting on a secondary list. So, pretty impressive there. My understanding of the way the arena, when it's going to be designed, it's going to be more of a vertical structure, so the fans are going to really be on top of the ice, which is tremendous from my standpoint, because they can have a huge impact on the game, being loud and boisterous, and bringing support to our guys and a little mayhem to the other side.
Probably know a little something about the 12th man, the Seahawks. So, what's the version of noise? What does it help in hockey? Is it as somebody who's been at arenas as somebody who's been in arenas that are loud as a visitor, does it throw off a player's game?
Well, I think the noise factor can affect the visiting team for sure, but what it really does is give the home team a boost, right? Because you get that behind you, they're with you. I know my cup runs in Pittsburgh, the fan base was incredible there. I know in 2002 when we lost the cup in Carolina, the noise was so loud. You're taking a face-off as a centerman, you couldn't communicate to your defenseman on the face-off hash mark because it was so loud. So. But that always gives you a boost, and my knowledge of the Seattle sports fans is they're very enthusiastic, and I'm excited to hear them when we get that building up and running.
And you will have plenty of opportunities to give them that message. I mean, believe me, this town you do know. I mean, it will be there with noise, and whatever jersey and team we have, they're going to be wearing those as well. We've done some fan fests, and definitely they're ready for some hockey here.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and I've kind of been a little bit of a Seattle sports fan going back to Jimmy Zorn and Steve Largent. I used to love that combination, and kind of grew up a bit of a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. But I know Russell Wilson spent a little bit of time at NC State University in Raleigh, where I was, and got to watch him play there. And I know he's had a tremendous career and just a great person. So excited to be part of this sports community and learn from the other organizations and help bring a first-class organization to the people of Seattle.
How much do you know about the Pacific Northwest? I mean, anybody in the family and outdoors type, hiking, skiing, lots of things you can do within a couple hours of Seattle.
Yeah, no, so I grew up in a little city called Sault Ste. Marie. It's kind of where all the Great Lakes come together. So kind of I guess a somewhat similar area with lakes and forests and fishing and hunting. Not a big hunter guy per se myself, but everything I've heard about this area is fantastic. My wife is from Connecticut, so a little bit different. The kids were born, 2 of them in Hartford and 1 in Pittsburgh. But everybody I talk to raves about this area and what it has to offer, and the 3 national state parks within an hour of downtown, the great hiking opportunities, the great skiing opportunities. So I look forward to trying to take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, and share that information with free agents, right, or anybody you're trying to recruit to play here.
Absolutely, that'll be a huge selling point when we're trying to recruit free agents. Just the quality of life that we offer here and the opportunity for them and their families to live a great life and do a lot of crazy outdoor things within a short distance of downtown Seattle.
So let's talk for a minute about Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm a Blackhawks fan, so I know the Esposito brothers.
Right.
Grew up there, and Tony. I played goalie, so Tony O, big idol. But that team, the Greyhounds, the junior team, and that city. I mean, you've got fellow Hall of Famers that were teammates with the Greyhounds, the junior team. You've got probably other hockey friends who come from Sault Ste. Marie. What is it with that town? What's happening? Is it the team? Is it the outdoors? I don't know.
I think a lot of it is just the environment of the city. It's a steel town, and just has that mentality, right? You get up in the morning, you go about doing your job, and you do it well. And I think the people in that city take a lot of pride in their junior team, and when the kids come into town, they experience that, right? They're getting fed well from all the Italians in the town. There's about 85% Italian background there, so the food's outstanding. They understand the passion and what the team means to the people, and they want to go out there and be successful. And there's been a lot of great players that have came through and worn that Greyhound jersey.
Yeah.
Probably most notably being Wayne Gretzky, but Joe Thornton was there, and a lot of other players.
Paul Coffey.
Paul Coffey. There's
Ron
a long
Francis.
list. Adam Foote. There's a long list of guys, but John Van Buesbroek and so on and so forth. So great that's my hometown. Great that I was able to play junior in my hometown, and has been a great franchise and continues today to be a great franchise.
So you have a Hall of Fame career. I know you're very humble about that. I want to ask you in a minute about hockey heroes as a player, but you retire and you go right back to work in the front office. What were you thinking in terms of what were your goals, or what made you make that decision? Because it was pretty quickly that you were back in the game.
Yeah, no, I took some time. Actually, we had the lockout the 1 year, and then I took one more year off. Jim Rutherford was the GM that signed me as a free agent, and we kept in touch, and a lot of conversation over those 2 years. And then we sat down and we talked about me getting back into the game, and Jim said we can have you kind of represent us in the community, go out and shake hands and do speeches, or we can have you kind of start in our player development. And for me, it was more important if I was going to do that to learn, and I said to Jim I'd rather do that. So I started in player development. So you're on the road, you're looking at kids that either we're drafting or kids we have drafted and trying to help get them to the NHL. You're working through that process in our development camps. From there, I got to spend some time as an assistant GM. When Jim made a coaching change, he asked me to go down the bench. I spent 2.5 years as an associate head coach. So you learn the trials and tribulations of what coaches deal with and on a day-to-day basis. And then, came back upstairs as an assistant GM before eventually becoming the GM there. So I think that's a heck of an education. I got to do it under a Hall of Fame GM in Jim Rutherford. So, I think that helped shape me and get me ready for the job. And I think it's a very important part of the process.
So I got a chance to talk to Jim earlier this week, and he said he was right. Ron was right there next to me, right? So you were obviously involved in a lot of the decisions, even running up before you were GM.
Yeah, no, Jim was great that way, and I think that's the way, as I said earlier, I like to operate as well too. If you're making decisions, you want your key people around you. You want to have those discussions with the people you trust, and you want to hear their opinion. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're responsible as the GM for making that call, but that's why you have these people working for you. And I was very fortunate with Jim that he gave me that opportunity. Right? He'd call me in, have those discussions. What do you think of this player, that player? If we're looking at this trade or that trade, would you do it? Would you not do it, and why? And that's all part of growing and learning the business, and I can't thank him enough.
Yeah, he wanted to hear your answer before you gave him his. So
no, and that's part of it though too, right? He has an idea as a GM in his mind of what he wants to do, and he's asking the people around him, their opinion, and ultimately you're either gonna make him think about something maybe that he hasn't thought of, or you're going to confirm what he was thinking, and it makes it easier to make that decision.
So flip side, I also talked to Mike Vellucci this week. You're assistant GM to you for 3 years, also head coach of the Charlotte Checkers, who happened to win the AHL Calder Trophy, our equivalent of the Stanley Cup, the AHL. So Mike also said you won't be surprised, many great things about you, but also said something that interested me, which is that you manage the scouts well. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think it's important for me to get on the road a little bit and see them on the road, so that they understand that I appreciate what they're doing, and that job is a tough job. I mean, a lot of small rinks, a lot of travel, a lot of late nights, trying to grab food and stuff like that. So I think it's important to have those times where you're on the road and you're spending time with them and having that dialogue. I think it's also important when you get into the meetings that you have seen some of the players, you can have that dialogue with them, and you give them the opportunity to do their job and be successful. I had a ton of respect for my guys and what they did and what they built in Carolina. And Mike was down there coaching those guys last year, did a great job in winning the Calder Cup. So the scouts are a kind of a lifeline of your organization. You got to make sure that they feel that they're a part of it. We would do phone calls and just conference calls to talk about things, what we're looking for, what we need, what's coming up in the draft, all those kind of things. So I think it's important that they know you believe in them and they're a part of what you're doing, and not just sort of leave them out there on an island until the draft comes.
So I'm probably not going to keep my job if I don't ask a couple questions before we get out of here. The new arena and Northgate, the training complex. I know you've toured the arena, and we talked a little bit about the bowl and the noise. What excites you? What sorts of things were going through your mind when you were walking through there with Ken Johnson, our construction executive?
Well, first of all, I'm amazed at the size of the project and what they're doing. To suspend that roof and then take everything out underneath and rebuild it from the ground up is absolutely incredible. Much smarter guys than me to be able to pull that off. But when I look at the designs and what they're doing, and not just the seats, I'm talking about the clubs and the restaurants and everything that goes with that arena. It's absolutely incredible. I don't think there's going to be anything better in the NHL once it's completed. So that's fantastic. It's going to make some place that our fans are proud to come to and be a part of and experience games and enjoy the food and the beverages and so on and so forth. So that's exciting from that standpoint. The practice facility, again, there's no corners being cut there either. Interesting, they did a project similar to that in Raleigh probably about 10 years ago, where they took an old mall and kind of converted it over, and it's absolutely going gangbusters now. The thing that is missing is the hockey sheets, and adding that into that environment, it's going to be important for our players to have a top-notch quality practice facility. I think it's going to be a great area, and the fact that they're incorporating a lot of things that our fans and the people can come and experience and be a part of, again, is something I think unique and will be very, very special for our fans.
I want to get to the arena in a second, but with Northgate, one of the really fun things is there's going to be an ability to see the Rink 1 ice, right? So that if fans are there, I think it might be the restaurant, it might be other ways, but they'll actually be able to, when it's possible, see a practice or a development camp or whatever. So in terms of amenities with both the arena and the training facility, what do you want, what do you have to have as somebody who's going to run this franchise, and what do you think will appeal to players? Like, what sorts of things will really sort of turn their head?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. Certainly the locker room. There's a lot of different components to that. I mean, you want to give them a top-notch workout facility so that they can train and get ready for games. You want to have the right medical facility included with hot tubs, cold tubs, steamers, whatever, to make sure that they're prepped in that aspect. The fact that they can come in, park, walk in, maybe have a chef cooking the meals and a nutritionist looking to make sure that their diet's staying on track is something that's kind of really important to a lot of players today. They spend a lot of money in the off season on their own, hiring these people to work with them and develop those programs. So be able to continue that over the course of the season, I think, is critical too. And it also helps us have much healthier players and lower the risk of injury over the course of an 82-game season, which is what you want. So I think there's a lot of things that factor in, especially in today's game, and those are all discussions that we'll have as we build out both our main rink and our practice facility and our minor league facility moving forward.
Ron, as a player, you started a program for the community with Children's Hospitals called Family Night Out. I'd love for you to share that with the fans a little bit, and then just your view of what you want NHL Seattle, the players, the coaching staff, the front office to be involved in the community.
Well, I think that's an important part, having the players and the organization active in the community. You know, my charity was the Family Night Out program. It kind of got started when I was a young kid. My younger brother had a learning disability. There was a lot of times we were traveling to cities out of town and spending time in hospitals and so on and so forth. And I know how tough it can be on families. So I started at first in Pittsburgh with the Children's Hospital there, and then continued with Duke Children's Hospital in Raleigh. And basically what we do is we take a patient that's in the hospital and give that patient carte blanche to whoever they wanted to bring with them, mom, dad, siblings, nurses, doctors, whoever. We'd give them a suite at a hockey game. We'd have them picked up in a limo, brought to the game. They had dinner in the arena. All the ladies were given flowers. They watched the game from the suite. The mascot came by to say hello. The dessert cart came by to give them dessert after the game. And when the game was complete, they were all escorted down outside the locker room where I took off my gear, come out, said hello, sign whatever they wanted signed, take pictures. And then they were limoed back. But I think for one night it gives the patient, a sense of they're getting to do this because of the patient, instead of, at times I think they feel a little bit frustrated that everybody's life is upside down because of what they're dealing with, which isn't the right sentiment to have. So I think it's important for our players and our organization to be part of the community, and that's certainly something that we'll push here in Seattle. And I know speaking with Todd, that's something he's thinks is very important as well.
So I'm sure you've heard this, that there was a Seattle team that won the Stanley Cup.
There was.
It's been a while, the Metropolitans. History of hockey, you've actually got a little bit of connection to Seattle hockey through Bill Dineen.
Yeah, so I was actually talking the other day with Kevin Dineen, congratulating him on getting the head coaching job in San Diego, Anaheim's AHL team. And he was telling me that his father, Bill, who was actually the head scout in Hartford, who drafted me at the time, and Kevin and I played together many years with the Hartford Whalers, so, and a little bit again with Carolina. But Kevin was telling me that his dad played here for 6 years. Mm-hmm. And he said he absolutely loved the area. He said still one of his favorite jerseys was the one that they wore at the time. I believe it was the Seattle Totems.
Yeah.
But he said he still had that jersey and loved it. And so there's a lot of hockey history here, and it's exciting, as we talked earlier about the fans and how quickly they responded to the opportunity to put down deposits on season tickets. And I think it's just a special place, and the possibility to do some great things here is incredible.
So, final question. You probably know this, but this is actually a really strong hockey town on the playing side or the participant side. We've obviously got a couple of really good WHL teams here, but also the community itself. The sport is growing. You probably know there's boys and girls who will be very happy to have those 3 sheets of ice, or 2.5, let's say, out at Northgate.
Yeah, no, I think that's exciting. I think when you bring the NHL team, that helps grow your game, and certainly to already have that market with a lot of young men and ladies playing the game, I think that's exciting. I thought it was interesting to me when they were talking about the amount of deposits that were made. I think the number was 65% of the people that put down deposits on hockey season tickets did not have season tickets to other pro sports, which we thought was a huge number. So there's obviously a huge hockey contingent here in Seattle, and I'm really excited to getting to know a lot of those fans and working for them and helping to bring a championship team back to the area.
Terrific. Cannot thank you enough. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to get a chance in our first interview for NHL Seattle.
Likewise, Bob. Thank you very much.